This is your daily dose of all things royal. Welcome back, my gorgeous, good looking friends. Wasn't it amazing to see Taylor Swift take this selfie with Prince William, Prince George, and Princess Charlotte? It was so nice that Prince William was able to have a little bit of fun on his birthday after all that he has been through. I'm sure Boss Baby Louis kept Catherine at home entertained, no doubt. But seeing this little surprise did put a smile on my face. It was really nice to see the family dominating the headlines around the world. Nothing that Meghan could have done would have overshadowed this viral moment. And right on cue, as expected, to keep Meghan's name in the headlines, we have now Daily Mail dropping this exclusive interview with Thomas Markle Sr. So here's what bugs me about this. Whenever Meghan gets overshadowed by the royal family, or Meghan doesn't have anything interesting going on and needs something to keep her name in the headlines, always the Markles somehow fit into that equation. I'm not saying that the Markles are connected to Meghan and plotting out when they should be doing interviews or not, but I find it odd that every time when Meghan needs something to keep her name in the headlines, her family then makes the headlines. If you look at this cover of yesterday's newspaper, you got to ask yourself this question. Why did the Daily Mail choose to put this exclusive interview on the front page when Thomas Markle's birthday is not for another month? This cover reminds me of the cover back in 2022 when it was the Queen's 96th birthday. And here you had a beautiful photo of the Queen and her horses. And then you have Prince Harry at the bottom tainting and souring the moment. It's the same thing, in my opinion. We're going to go through this interview in a second because there's some things that I want to raise attention to. But the question that I have in the back of my head is, who actually approached who to do this interview? Was it Thomas Markle Sr. that approached the Daily Mail and said, hey, look, I want to make this plea to my daughter because I'm turning 80 and I really would like to see my grandkids? Or did the Daily Mail reach out to Thomas Markle and said, hey, would you give an interview? Your birthday's coming up and like to get your thoughts and feelings and we'll pay you. Could it have been maybe Meghan setting her family up again in order to keep her name in the headlines? Like, we do know that Meghan uses her family and whatever attention that they get in order to draw attention to herself. So was this a situation where this would apply? And this is not the only time that I've noticed this happened off the top of my head. Remember when the Markles did that interview with Australia? This was right before, actually a week before the coronation. And right after Meghan had flooded the media around this letter that she had sent to King Charles about the racism in the family. So there was like a low period to where they dropped the teaser for the Markles interview. Y'all remember this, right? This was supposed to be Mr. Markle's last interview, but I guess that's not the case anymore. Anyhow, here we are again, and there are a couple things that I would like to point out. So let's dig into this article. So Thomas Markle is going to be turning 80 on July 18th. And in past interviews, we all know that he is desperate to reconnect with his daughter because he doesn't know how much time he has left, as he has said that the Markle men never have made it past 80. So this is a milestone for the Markle family. I can understand Thomas Markle's perspective and his desperation, as in his mind, he doesn't think he has that much time left and he just wants to make peace, which is totally understandable. However, what makes me uncomfortable is the manner and way that Thomas is going about this reconciliation, that being through the media. If the whole reason why Meghan will not talk to her father is because of him working with the media when she told him not to, then why would you think this would be the right path to go down in order to get this last request? If Meghan hasn't reacted to the last several interviews over a couple of years, what makes you think she's going to all of a sudden have a change of heart? She won't unless there's something in it for her. Now we'll get to that in a second. The article says, Mr. Markle has never met his grandchildren Archie, 5, and 3-year-old little Betty. Speaking from his cliffside home in Rosarito, Mexico, just 250 miles from the Sussex's 16-bathroom home in Montecito, California, he remains perplexed that he has also never met his son-in-law. When I reflect back on my life, as you do when you're approaching 80, That's one of the questions I cannot find an answer for. Why didn't Harry ever come to meet me? He has the resources to fly around the world and does, but why didn't he come to see me? Particularly when people in the royal household, like Jason Knopf, Harry and Meghan's former communications secretary, were urging him to do so. That has never made sense to me. What man gets married without meeting his wife's father? As he speaks, the effects of a serious stroke he suffered 2 years ago are apparent. At times, he struggles to find words or stumbles over sentences. He endures the aches and pains of old age, including a bad knee and bad back, and is frustrated when he cannot remember names and places. Mr. Markle feels deep empathy for King Charles, who is in the same boat as far as not seeing his grandchildren is concerned. All right, let's pause for a second. I think the one thing that Mr. Markle could have done differently was demand to meet Prince Harry in person. If he wasn't Prince Harry and it was some other Joe Schmo, do you honestly think Mr. Markle would have approved and gave a blessing to some random dude that he's never met before? I think Thomas was not going to do anything to get in the way of Meghan making it down the aisle and into this family, because in his mind, he also saw himself making it down the aisle and into this family. And when that didn't happen, all of a sudden now we're all talking about, well, why didn't Harry meet Mr. Markle? And he didn't even ask for her hand in person. Like, why wasn't that strange in the beginning? Anyhow, the article goes into talking about little Betty and Archie and how they're missing out on getting to know their cousins and the rest of the family, as well as learning about their birthright. He then goes into talking about King Charles and how he would like to sit down and talk to him, because I'm sure that both of them have the same kind of questions as to why certain things have been happening. The author then goes into talking about Mr. Markle's past, and he writes, after divorcing his first wife, Rosalind, the mother of his two oldest children, Samantha and Tom Jr., he decided to try his luck in Hollywood, in Los Angeles. He initially worked in a motel where he rubbed shoulders with prostitutes and an accused murderer before landing his big break with ABC television. I've had a colorful life, he said. When I worked at the motel, I was friends with a bodyguard called Gregory Deals. Deals, who died in 1997, was tried and acquitted for his involvement in a case known as the Wonderful Murders, in which 4 people were killed during a brutal robbery at a drug dealer's house. The case remains unsolved. Mr. Markle said, they were interesting times. I loved my career and enjoyed being behind the camera. I worked with some of the biggest stars in Hollywood like Elizabeth Taylor and covered the red carpet at the Oscars. Mr. Markle became the lighting director on 2 popular shows, General Hospital and Married with Children. So now here's where it gets interesting. He met Meghan's mother, Doria, when she was a secretary working at the same studio, and even though they divorced when Meghan was 2, they remained close. So here's what I want to know. Why are there so many different stories regarding Doria and her past? So now this interview with Thomas Markle for the Daily Mail is saying that Thomas and Doria met when she was a secretary working in the same studio as Thomas. So here's why I get frustrated, because Thomas Markle was interviewed by Tom Bauer for the book Revenge. And in the book Revenge, Bauer writes, 33 years old, Thomas had just been nominated for an Emmy as the lighting director of the daytime TV soap General Hospital. Unsurprisingly, he spotted Doria, a slim, beautiful, black 21-year-old trainee makeup artist with a nose stud. So which was it? Was Doria a secretary, or was she just a trainee for doing makeup? Like, what's the deal here with Doria? So now going back to this Daily Mail article, it gets even more interesting with Thomas Markle continuing to say, we had such an amicable divorce that after I retired to Mexico and had to go to LA, I would stay with Doria and she'd cook me dinner. I always provided well for Meghan and Doria and was happy to do so. There was never any bad blood between us until Meghan met Harry. Meghan lived full-time with her father from the age of 11 when Doria launched an import and export business and traveled extensively. Meghan grew up on TV sets that I was working on. I'd either collect her from school myself or would send a car to get her and bring her to the set. Pertaining to Doria, I don't think Thomas is giving us a straight answer. So, in this Daily Mail article, it's stating that she was gone because she traveled extensively in this import export business. Traditionally, if you're doing imports and exports, it means other countries. But in Tom Bauer's book Revenge, he writes just before her ninth birthday in 1990, Meghan's life changed. Doria announced that she had started Distant Treasures, a clothing and jewelry business. She would need to travel to markets across the country. Somewhat puzzled, Thomas never quite understood why Doria would be away for 3 weeks. But he didn't complain and agreed to take full responsibility for their daughter. See, now none of this makes any kind of sense anymore because if Doria was an import export business and she's traveling across the country, that would technically be domestic product, right? Well, in any case, he's saying here that Doria was going to be gone for 3 weeks. I thought she was gone for a few years. In this book, they completely gloss over the fact that Doria had been missing for a few years, and nobody seems to be able to give a straight answer, not even Thomas Markle. Why? Then, on top of it, before Meghan was ever known or anyone knew who she was, and she was doing these little interviews here and there for the TIG, she would tell people that her love of travel came from the fact that as a kid, she got to travel to all these different places because her mom was a travel agent. Then, on top of it, before Meghan was ever known or anyone knew who she was, and she was doing these little interviews here and there for the TIG, she would tell people that her love of travel came from the fact that as a kid, she got to travel to all these different places because her mom was a travel agent. So now here's the thing. If Thomas Markle is claiming that he took care of both Meghan and Doria even after the fact that they divorced, how is it that Doria ended up in so much financial trouble and had to file bankruptcy and God knows what else? And the God knows what else lies in those records that have been expunged. Happened to be expunged in 2016, right as it was announced that Prince Harry was dating Meghan. Clearly, something happened in a transaction here that now no longer allows you to see any of the documents. Why is that? It's evidently clear we're not getting the full story about Doria. And why Mr. Markle is protecting her, I don't know. Perhaps maybe Doria has something on Thomas Markle. Has it ever occurred that maybe the reason why Thomas Markle Sr. does not want to share the letter that Meghan wrote him, for it might reveal things about him that he doesn't want the world to know? Think about this for a second. Why bother to even mention that she said hurtful and malicious things? If you're truly not wanting to paint her in this particular light. I truly believe that there's something that Meghan said about Mr. Markle that he does not want to come out. It almost feels like what Meghan did to Catherine when she had accused Catherine of making her cry, but didn't want to tell Oprah exactly what the reasoning was because it would have been disparaging. But at the same time, Meghan was being disparaging, the same way that Thomas is by revealing that there were other things in that letter that were hurtful and malicious. Why bother mention it if you didn't want to paint your daughter in that light? You know what I mean? From this Daily Mail article, you get the feeling that, oh, everything was so cool and collected between him and Doria, and that they co-parented, or actually he took on more of the responsibility and it was not a big deal. When you go back to Tom Bauer's book Revenge, it states here that at first Thomas refused to intervene. Then he too became angered by Doria's lifestyle. We just were on different paths, he recalled without rancor. I was also married to my work, he admitted. In Thomas's version, Doria's fondness for marijuana, her sex life, and her antagonism towards Samantha, who had just been diagnosed with multiple sclerosis, ended the marriage. Could this be maybe where the root of Meghan's hatred and animosity towards Samantha lie when she was diagnosed with this multiple sclerosis? Probably during that time, Mr. Markle had given Samantha maybe more attention than he was giving both Doria and Meghan because he was trying to take care of his other daughter? I think so. I think that could have caused some type of jealousy with Meghan. Also, if this put a strain on the marriage and ultimately contributed to the divorce, I could also see where Meghan would be feeling animosity, like thinking, well, if she wasn't sick, then maybe my parents would still be together. You know what I mean? In any case, we now have different variations of Doria's past, told by not only Meghan, but also by Mr. Markle. So the question is, what is really going on? Well, your guess is as good as mine. We can only speculate, but honestly, what I can see happening down the road is that Meghan is running out of all kinds of opportunities and options, especially with this deal with Netflix. And I could totally see her use reconciling with her father as the beginning of another rebranding attempt to paint her as this misunderstood wife of a husband who is the one who's responsible for why she didn't talk to her father after all these years. And I think if they are going to down the road get divorced, because it will be inevitable, it will happen, Meghan has no more use for Prince Harry. And part of the narrative as to why all her relationships went to the side is because now her husband was the one who was responsible for that. And we'll start to see Prince Harry now all of a sudden being blamed for the breakdown between her and her family. Remember, Harry did say that the reason why Meghan doesn't have a father anymore is because of him. So here we go. But I almost wonder, is this interview that Mr. Markle had did with the Daily Mail some type of staging being set and setting up for a possible reunion? Is this something that Meghan is looking at? I think so. I think if there was a reporter that reached out to Mr. Markle, Meghan set that reporter up to reach out to him for the mere purpose of using it to overshadow and to do exactly what was done this past Sunday. That's just my opinion. That's what I see. Do I think Mr. Markle is in cahoots with Meghan? No, I don't. But I do think that Meghan would use this as an opportunity to change her branding or her PR. Maybe. I think it could happen. Would she do it for her father because it's his dying wish? No. She's going to do it for herself. And I think this is going to be like a last resort for her. I think it's pretty clear that Meghan used Doria for specific purposes, and when she's not needed, she then disappears. Has anybody seen where Doria has been? I think the next couple weeks, maybe we'll see a sighting of Doria because we need to keep Meghan in the headlines, possibly something to do with the Black community. Because we know that Meghan needs to use her mother to make people believe and see that she is a Black woman. Anyway, at the end of the day, what Meghan and her mother Doria did to Thomas Markle Sr., not only leading up to the wedding, but afterwards, to me, I think is unforgivable. And I think Thomas Markle needs to stop with these pleas and desperate attempts to beg his daughter to give him a phone call. Thomas Markle needs to grieve the fact that the daughter that he once knew no longer exists, and he needs to mourn that and spend the remaining time here on this earth with the people that love him, like Samantha and Tom Jr., as well as the other grandkids and great grandkids, I believe. You see, Meghan is not going to respond to anything that Thomas Markle does. In fact, it's only going to make her that much more stubborn to stay away. I do believe, and this is like the law of attraction, we see it going on with the royal family. The royal family wants nothing to do with Meghan Markle. And as you can see, Meghan is desperately trying so hard to get back on the same plane with these folks, which will never, ever happen again. But you see, with her father, she knows that she can just pick the phone up and say, "Hey, Daddy, I'm sorry. Can I come see you?" And he'll be like, "Yes, come on back." Not even making any kind of stink about it. He will welcome her with open arms. And she doesn't want that. She knows she can have that. And I hate to say it, but in the law of attraction, you always want things that you can't have. And I think if Thomas Markle somehow puts his foot down and is like, Meghan is dead to me, and, I accept the fact that I'll never see her again and go on living life, you can bet that this narcissist is going to figure out a way in order to gain control back again. Because right now she realizes that, she could snap her fingers and her father will come running to her. Even though she did all of this stuff, he will drop everything for her. You know what, Meghan? You never miss the water until the well runs dry. And I think that's what needs to happen here if Mr. Markle has any chance at reuniting or reconciling with his daughter. I think Mr. Markle needs to really put his foot down and just write Meghan off. Publicly declare that she is dead to him. I guarantee you that will cut through Meghan more than anything else. Right now, she knows that her father will be there till the end of time, and she's okay with that as long as she doesn't have to deal with it. But if he just draws a firm line and says, I don't have a daughter anymore, that is going to drive Meghan nuts. That's my opinion. But what do you guys think? Let me know your thoughts. Are you seeing the same thing that I'm seeing? Is this a coincidence? Is Meghan setting Thomas Markle Sr. up? Are they in cahoots together? Let me know what you think. As always, I will be back with more content. But until then, please be safe, and I'll talk to you later. Bye!
You're such a fraud.